Welcome back to the Dallas Film School Student Podcast. My name is Ashrita Ramachandrula, and I'm your host today. Today we're going to be talking about race and representation. I'm with Jelai Johnson and Edelin Rodriguez. Do you think you guys can introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Jelai Johnson. I've been with Dallas Film School for about a little over a year. And yeah, I've been production designer for a short film project, producer for CD, and editor for our latest
Music video?
music video.
Right.
I was first AD for our most recent short film. And yeah, first AD producer. Yeah.
My name is Edelin. I've done directing for a music video. I've been camera operator for our for a short film, and I've done kind of some floating. I've done a little editing for the music video as well. Just that sort of stuff.
Okay. How have y'all been enjoying the time here?
It's great.
Okay.
10 out of 10 would recommend.
Yes.
Hello.
100%. I agree.
Okay. Well, let's just jump right into it. I wanted to get your thoughts on how cultural representation is communicated today within the film industry.
Well, I feel that representation is very much just a bunch of stereotypes, and that those stereotypes are just set for certain cultures and races, and that's all you see, and that's all people perceive of those certain cultures or races. So for me specifically, I would say, like, for Hispanic stereotypes, it would be like jobs that Hispanics have in the film are like maids, or they're in gangs, or they're pregnant at a young age. And then they also, like, some don't speak English, or if they do, it's very broken and they have accents. Or there's just so much that goes into it that people don't think, like, they're stereotypes, and that's all that people see is those stereotypes. So every movie that you see, you kind of have that in it. And it's like, that's not the only thing we do. We don't all have accents, or we don't all have those jobs. So it's very interesting to see that.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate because I feel like people kind of take this as a reference for, like, when creating more.
I agree. I
Yeah.
feel like that's all they use. They don't try to, like, dig deeper and see, like, oh, what makes these people tick?
Right,
Or, like,
right.
what really influences that? Like, maybe these people have come from different countries and moved over here to America with nothing and have to build off of that, and that's the reason why. They just throw it in there without really researching it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think a big conflict with these stereotypes is that there's a lack of intimacy when talking about things. There are a lot of conflicts within culture groups that don't get expressed because a lot of the times it feels like people are making movies to just address general problems or general ideas. Like, they don't want to be too specific about certain things, but I feel like being specific about certain problems within cultural groups is how you kind of break involving stereotypes.
Yeah. Okay, well, is there an example of what an ideal representation would look within the movies and things like that, like storytelling?
Yeah. I think for me, the movie Waves, directed by Trey Edward Schultz, has been probably the most ideal form of representation, specifically for Black culture for me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it comes into ties with family dynamic, or kind of just how they address racial issues without throwing it in your face. I mean, in this movie, they managed to go over, getting called the N-word, or Black religion in the South, or the toxic masculinity, but then specifically a Black father-son, and even elements of the talk, which for people who don't know what the talk is in reference to Black culture, that's essentially a moment where you as a Black person gets set down and kind of just told your position in society and how you're perceived. And they managed to cover all these topics without pushing it down your throat or making the thematic, meaning of the movie about that. These were just characters in these racial situations in day-to-day life. And I think because they were so intimate and specific with these characters, it didn't feel as generalized, and it didn't get perceived as stereotypical Black family. Yeah.
How do you think that has a holistic effect within the culture?
Yeah, I think being able to see, well, I'm going to talk from my personal experience, because I mean, it resonates with me so heavily strictly because of the family dynamic and I guess you could say economic status of the family. I mean, like, for me personally, the themes and the things that happened in this movie were more realistic to me than, I guess, stereotypical matters when they address Black culture. Like, if I had a brother who went to jail, I could see more correlation with how this character went to jail, or Black toxic masculinity has been presented in my life more similarly how the dynamic of this father and son was shown. So I think just breaking the stereotypical boundaries of what is Black, what is considered, you know, Black dynamic, Black family dynamic has resonated the most with me.
Okay, so would you say being kind of more individual, like unique, brings more of that relatability and that realism?
And not even like always trying to be unique, because like you sometimes see movies that kind of like try to like stress kind of, like they're different, they're like not even that. I think even shows and movies like American Fiction that kind of question, you know, Black motives and Black creative, you know, like, are we really telling these stories from authentic truth, or is it just what we think we need to express in this art, you know? And I just saw the first season of Atlanta. Perfect. I mean, the way they like question society and Black like perspectives and Black topics, it's, I think even shows in reference to that kind of break the norms in itself, like getting people to question, why am I doing this? Is it because I need to be a Black artist, or is it just because this resonates with me and is my truth?
Yeah, right. Especially in a profound way, not like in an actual story, not like, again, like shoving it down your throat, that kind of thing. Edelin, what about you? Any ideal representation?
Yeah, for me, it's actually a TV show. It's called One Day at a Time, and it's about a Cuban-American family that, well, it's a mom, it's a grandma, and it's 2 kids, and the mom's divorced, so she's working to support her family, and the grandma lives with them, and it's kind of just about their family dynamic in their lives. And it's just interesting the way they put it together, because yes, they do have some like stereotypical things that you would be like, oh, but you just talked about that, and like, you know, so like the grandma does have an accent, or she speaks English, but it's not the perfect English that I would say, like, you know, they portray Hispanics not having. But the way that they incorporate it and explain it and kind of like go about it, it's so much better, because they actually explain why she doesn't speak perfect English. It's because she came from Cuba. She came over, she immigrated over, and, you know, obviously, like, this is new for her. Like, you're not gonna know the language right away, and it's harder for people to know the language when they come from somewhere else. But the mom, they all have their own personalities, and they go through things that usually Hispanic people go through and people don't think about. Like, the mom, she deals with depression, anxiety, so mental health issues that a lot of shows or movies don't talk about. And it's like, that's something that really like affects Hispanic people, because we don't get talked about our mental health issues and or how to deal with it, and our families don't like respect that. Like, they don't know how to deal with it either. They just think like, oh, we're Hispanic, we don't do that. That's not something we do. You just go to church, you talk to God, stuff like that. Like, yes, we're religious, but there's other things that come about it. It's not all like, it's not just like, oh, it's in your head. Like, it's issues that need to be talked about, because there's people dealing with that, Hispanic people dealing with that don't know how to deal with it. So it just messes up other people, because they think, oh, that's just not something we go through, stuff like that. But this show talks about it and talks about how to go with it and talks about accepting it. And there's other things like sexuality. Like, one of the characters, she's a lesbian, and at first, like, they don't accept her, because for our culture sometimes it's hard to accept stuff like that. Like, you know, it's like, oh, that's not the way God made it, or stuff like that. And they go about it in a way, like, at first they don't accept it, but then the more they discuss it and talk about it, they do. And I feel like that really just helps people of our culture, like, understand that, you know, maybe they don't get it at first because that's not the way they grew up, but yes, it's okay to accept it. Like, you could still be yourself. And I like how they portray everything like that. Like, it's so easy to just connect with the characters, and it's nice because it really represents real Hispanic families. And and I appreciate that.
So it's more about kind of the motivation and like the meaning behind it. I think for both aspects, it's like that, taking all these stereotypes and all these ideas about people and like having it all in one. It's just to tell the story. You kind of, not necessarily like pick one, but just have that meaning behind it within the character development and storytelling.
Yeah.
So okay, yeah.
Yeah.
What got y'all so introspective on these topics in the first place?
Yeah. So I think I can say for both of us, me and Edelin, we kind of got introduced to filmmaking through acting.
Yeah.
We started in the acting program here.
Okay.
And yeah, I just want to like clarify that, you know, I kind of speak a little bit more critically about kind of race and representation within Black culture and stuff like that, but it was movies heavily about race that kind of got me into this. Like, you know, seeing like Selma and Get Out when I was 8, or like some of the most like prompt, like visceral experiences I've had in theaters. Like, you know, kind of like my core memories of theater. I mean, of movies. Or yeah, even watching like The Hate You Give and The Help. Like those films made me want to act. It's not just like a black and white of like I'm pro race in film or I'm not. It's, you know, I feel like those films are very like, they're filled with a lot of passion, and it kind of is an easy way to get culture and the message across. But like personally, I think it was kind of movies that like question the narrative, like Moonlight, or you know, again I say American Fiction, you know, movies that kind of take culture and put it in a introspective way that people can kind of take it as they wish, or it's where it's not the central message. Because I feel like sometimes in movies they try to, like I said before, educate people, and it feels a lot of like, oh, like they're giving you the like base format of what it means to be Black, because they're just trying to educate you. And I feel like movies that kind of like deter away from that and are...
Can we go back about... Can you just restart that sentence because we had some audio interference?
Yeah.
All right. On 3. 3, 2, 1, action.
Yeah, but like in a sense, movies that kind of try to educate you, kind of, you know, suffocate what it means to be Black or what it means to be a certain culture. I think movies that kind of deteriorate away from that and kind of create more, like I said, specific, intimate narratives are things that attract me.
Yeah. Okay. Edelin?
Yeah, I understand that. Like, honestly, for me, it's not more movies. It's like actors or like people in the industry that kind of discuss stuff like this or are part of movies that really portray Hispanic culture correctly. And even though I said like, stereotypes, like that's what people stick to, I do feel like I watch shows like Modern Family where Sofia Vergara, her character is that spicy Latina that has the accent, and I enjoyed watching it. And like, I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just like, if that's the only thing about her character, then it's not right. Like, there's more to it. So I do love Sofia Vergara, and she does a really good job playing her roles and things. And I like the way she portrayed that character, because it's like, for her, that's how she is. Like, even her actor, like her as an actor, her as a person, she has that accent, and she acts like that on the daily. So it's like, it's not a character for her, it's more like her. Yeah. So that's why I think that that's okay, because it's like, that's how she is. And then some actors that I really look up to are America Ferrera. She does have a TED Talk on, you know, her identity and how getting into the industry as a Latina was hard for her because of those stereotypes that were put on her, like being in a gang, being a cholo, being pregnant, like having the accent, or not being able to get jobs because they're like, oh, be more Hispanic, or make your voice sound more Hispanic. And then she didn't understand what that meant, but they just mean make it have an accent, broken English, which that's not okay. If that's not how you are, you shouldn't portray it like that, because not everybody does that. But I love the way America Ferrera talks about that stuff. She really portrays her roles really well, especially in her one movie, The Real Women Have Curves.
Yes.
I love that movie. It's so good. And I feel like it's such a classic movie to think about, because in that movie, she portrays a Latina that she goes to school, but she has to work to support her family, and her family doesn't want her to go to college because they want her to help out in the family business. And she's trying to stand up for herself, but it's hard because they need the money. She wants to stick with her family because family is so important. But she also talks about being a woman and being curvy, not being skinny, and, you know, it's okay to have different body types, and it's okay to be proud about it. Like, she just doesn't go about only being Hispanic, and the parts that are about being Hispanic are just talked about correctly in the way that's like, oh yeah, I can relate to that. And then also in her TV show Ugly Betty,
Yes, I was about to
she
say,
also does the same things.
Yes.
Like, the way they, like, yeah, she's Hispanic, like, she lives with her dad and her sister does have a kid, and she had a kid young, but that's not all we talk about. Like, she has her own business. She's a hairstylist, which kind of correlates to me because my mom's also a hairstylist, so I get that. And those things. And it's like, her kid is also gay, so they accept that. And it's like, she's trying to get a job. She goes to college, she has a degree, like, she gets a job, and then she might not be the prettiest, or at least people don't think she's the prettiest, but, like, that doesn't stop her. Like, she's being herself.
Yeah.
And I really like the way she portrays those characters because, like, you know, Hispanic people can be whatever they want. Like, we're not just like, oh yeah, you get pregnant, like, you have to stay at home, like, stuff like that. You have an accent,
Yeah.
things like that. Like, we can go out and do other things. Like, she has a job at a fashion magazine, which people didn't think she could get because, you know, she can't dress correctly or whatnot. And other actors as well. I feel like going back to One Day at a Time, we have Rita Moreno. She's an icon, classic. I think she has an EGOT, and she was like the first Hispanic woman to get an Oscar, I believe it was. And I just think, like, her roles are amazing. Like, especially One Day at a Time, I loved her playing the abuela. Like, the way she portrayed that character was just so realistic. Like, that's my grandma, you know?
Yeah.
And I love the way they portray these characters because they're so well done. And then another one, I say Zoe Saldana. I love her. And I feel like I relate to her a little more because she is Dominican and like me. So I love her for that. But the thing is, in her film, she doesn't do, like, racial things. She kind of just plays, like, those really cool roles that everybody wants to do.
Right.
And it kind of just shows, like, oh yeah, Hispanic people can play those roles. It doesn't have to be about race.
Completely, yes.
And those things, yeah.
Yeah, it's all about that breaking the boundaries, like, as an actor, as a writer, as a director.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm so grateful to have talked about this. It's so important to talk about topics like these and just bring that diversity into the conversation itself. So, well, that about wraps it up. Thank you guys for watching today's podcast. We have a podcast every week with different hosts, guests, and topics, and we'll see you next week.